with the United States that paused the tariffs, we made further commitments. We appointed Kevin Brosseau as our fentanyl czar, a man who dedicated his multi-decade career in law enforcement to combating organized crime networks and drug trafficking. We designated 7 drug cartels, sick, evil groups who cynically profit off the pain and suffering of people on both sides of the border, as the terrorist organizations that they are. And just yesterday, we launched a new joint operations partnership supported by a $200 million investment between Canada's security and law enforcement agencies, a partnership that will enhance the coordination of information and intelligence in order to thwart criminal gangs involved in the illegal fentanyl trade. And critically, our actions are working. As the U.S. Customs and Border Protection just acknowledged, there was a 97% drop in fentanyl seizures from January compared to December, to a near zero low of less than half an ounce seized in January, even with all the further enforcements and actions we've taken at the borders. In sum, we stepped up. We engaged closely and constructively with the President and his administration. We did everything we promised. We stuck to our word. And we did it because we believe in working together to protect our citizens. Now I want to speak directly to one specific American. Donald. In the over 8 years you and I have worked together, we've done big things. We signed a historic deal that has created record jobs and growth in both of our countries. We've done big things together on the world stage, as Canada and the US have done together for decades, for generations. And now, we should be working together to ensure even greater prosperity for North Americans in a very uncertain and challenging world. Now, it's not in my habit to agree with the Wall Street Journal, but Donald, they point out that even though you're a very smart guy, this is a very dumb thing to do. We two friends fighting is exactly what our opponents around the world want to see. And now, to my fellow Canadians, I won't sugarcoat it. This is going to be tough, even though we're all going to pull together, because that's what we do. We will use every tool at our disposal so Canadian workers and businesses can weather this storm. From expanding EI benefits and making them more flexible to providing direct supports to businesses, we will be there as needed to help. But Canada, make no mistake, no matter how long this lasts, no matter what the cost, the federal government and other orders of government will be there for you. We will defend Canadian jobs. We will take measures to prevent predatory behavior that threatens Canadian companies because of the impacts of this trade war, leaving them open to takeovers. We will relentlessly fight to protect our economy. We will stand up for Canadians every single second of every single day, because this country is worth fighting for. Les derniers mois ont été stressants et honnêtement épuisants
and really tiring for all of us, frankly. But I think we can be reassured by the incredible solidarity that our society showed with our companies, civil society, and Indigenous society, the entire society is unanimous. We have to talk to our American partners. Those tariffs are a very bad idea. At the same time, working internally to eliminate obstacles between trade between our states and to find new markets throughout the world, to have better economy, more solid, more robust. The last years, I discussed with leaders all over the world. My message hasn't changed. Canada is a reliable partner, and our doors are open. During the last week, we made more efforts to increase our collaboration with Mexico, that is also a victim of these tariffs. Together, we will find other ways of working and rely one with each other to confront this. Confronted with this uncertainty, Canadians show much solidarity. You share products to help companies. I saw you change travel plans to remain in Canada. And I saw that you were making more efforts to support small businesses and workers. I saw that you defended your culture to make it shine even more. I saw you encourage your athletes with unwavering support and enthusiasm. I cannot be more proud of my fellow Canadians. But there's something else I want to ask you. Ask from you. Do not abandon, do not fight for your country. Do everything you can to choose Canada, to defend Canada. We will go through these difficult times together. I've never been so optimistic after seeing how you have reacted in the past weeks. And we will go through, we will survive these difficult times. Canada is the best country in the world. There are reasons to be so proud of this country and this snowy country. And I am proud of our solidarity, our capacity to weather the storm. We have different origins, different languages, but when it comes to defending our country, we are one. Through the storm, Canadians can always on each other, on one another.
But every time we've faced long odds and seemingly insurmountable obstacles, we've not only survived, we've emerged stronger than ever. Because when it comes to defending our great nation, there is no price we all aren't willing to pay. And today is no different. Merci beaucoup, mes amis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. Merci beaucoup. We will now take 20 minutes of questions. Nous prendrons 20 minutes de questions. One question, one follow-up, une question, un suivi. Merci.
Hi, Prime Minister. Tom Perry with CBC. You're reaching out to the President today. You're speaking directly to him. We heard from U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, who says that Donald Trump will be speaking to Canadians. And he also says that he wants to see more progress on fentanyl. So my question to you is, do you have any conversation scheduled with Donald Trump in the coming days? Is that something maybe your successor should do? And do you really believe that this is about fentanyl, or is there something larger at play here?
I have offered to speak to Donald over the past number of days, and I expect to speak with him in the days to come. I'm always there to talk with him about the importance of working together to take on the world at this time. The facts show very clearly that in terms of taking action on fentanyl, we are doing everything that is necessary, and not just for the United States, for ourselves as well, as Canadians are suffering as well from the scourge that is illegal fentanyl. We have laid out extensive plans, actions, cooperations, including as recently as the past days in Washington, and they have always been very well received. And the numbers bear that out. I think in what President Trump said yesterday, that there is nothing Canada or Mexico can do to avoid these tariffs, underlines very clearly what I think a lot of us have suspected for a long time, that these tariffs are not specifically about fentanyl, even though that is the legal justification he must use to actually move forward with these tariffs.
Monsieur Trudeau, en français, à part l'allocution que vous avez eue envers Monsieur Trump, lui avez-vous parlé au cours des
After
derniers
the
jours, des dernières heures?
Have you talked to
Non.
Mr.
Je me
Trump
suis mis
besides
à sa
that
disposition
conversation
pour
with
parler
you
pendant les
days
derniers
ago?
jours, comme on avait fait il y a 30 jours.
We,
J'espère lui parler dans
I
les
hope
jours à venir.
you
Je suis toujours
talk
ouvert pour parler.
to him in the future.
You mentioned this
My
off the
door is
top.
open.
You're seeing the United States seemingly moving closer to Moscow. This is a same day that the United States has announced it's suspending aid for Ukraine. The Kremlin just said that U.S. foreign policy now is in alignment with Russia. So how do you successfully, or your successor, successfully negotiate with a president who seems to regard his friends as his enemies and his enemies as his friends?
In this regards, Canada and Canadians are very clear. We know who our friends are. We know who our opponents are. And there is no question that Vladimir Putin and his attack not just on Ukraine, but on the rules-based international order, on the founding principles of the United Nations, is an opponent of Canada. I think the question that we all need to be watching closely is, what do the American people think? How do Americans feel about jettisoning one's friends and allies in favor of a country that has never wished Americans well and continues to act in ways that harm the global economy and specifically the American economy and American values and principles?
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Valérie Gavage de Radio-Canada.
Radio-Canada.
Sur les programmes d'aide, au Québec, on parle de 160 000 emplois qui pourraient être
We talk
perdus,
about
Monsieur le
160,000
Dans le but d'être
jobs that
toujours,
could be
il y aura
lost.
des dans les usines d'auto. Est-ce qu'il y a quelque chose sur la table
Carbon.
aujourd'hui qui
Is
peut
there
être annoncé
something,
pour les
a plan
Canadiens, ne serait-ce que
on the
de
table
limiter le délai là, pour avoir
to
accès à
limit
l'assurance emploi?
the delay to have access to employment, workers' compensation? I want to remind people that our objective is not to find ways so Canadians can go through these terrible times. It's to prevent these terrible times to last longer than the minimum time necessary. We can eliminate these tariffs tomorrow. That's what we're going to try to do. Our priority is to end this commercial trade war.
Le fait que des Américains, dès
The fact that
aujourd'hui,
Americans
font faire face
already
à des
today
mises
will
à pied,
be
vont faire
confronted
face
with
à des problèmes
layoffs,
au niveau de leur
difficulties with regards
consommation,
to their
va nous aider à mettre fin à ces défis le plus
this will
rapidement
help us
possible.
to
Mais
end
effectivement,
these
on est en
problems
train
as
de
soon as
regarder
possible.
toutes
But
sortes
we're
de choses
considering
que nous
many
pourrons
things
faire si
that we
effectivement
can
ces
do
tarifs durent
if these
plus
tariffs
longtemps
last
qu'une
longer
journée ou deux,
than
même
one or
avec des
two
actions
days,
quasiment
even with
immédiates sur l'assurance emploi qu'on va
immediate
regarder aujourd'hui même.
actions with the workers'
I think the thing to
compensation,
remember first and
employment
foremost as we
insurance.
reflect on the impacts on Canadian workers and Canadian jobs and businesses is that, first of all, there will be similar impacts on Americans losing their jobs, American families paying more for basic goods that they rely on at a time where times are tight everywhere. But our focus has to be on getting these tariffs lifted as quickly as possible. What can we do in the coming days is our focus to make sure that these tariffs don't last a second longer than necessary. So we will be looking at, including looking in the coming day at things we can do around adjusting EI to support people through this difficult time. But our priority has to be not on figuring out how to manage through these tariffs over the coming days and weeks and months, but on doing everything we can to get them lifted and put an end to this unjustified trade war that hurts American families and Canadian families.
On a l'impression que vous n'avez plus beaucoup de cartes dans votre jeu. Est-ce que
You don't have
de
any cards
devancer
in
la
your deck
négociation de la renégociation de la CEUM fait partie des
to
plans
go
actuellement?
forward, accelerate the renegotiation? Is that something that you plan?
Actuellement, dans les conversations
Currently,
avec
in the
le
conversations
président,
with the president,
c'est pas très clair ce qu'il
it's
veut.
not very clear what's going on.
Ou peut-être la
Or
seule
maybe
clarté, c'est ce qu'il a dit à multiples
What is
reprises,
clear
que son
is what he
but,
said to
c'est
several
de
times
faire
that his
écrouler
objective is
l'économie
to
canadienne,
kill
pour ensuite
Canadian
pouvoir parler
economy,
d'annexation.
to
C'est
talk
ce qu'il
about
veut.
annexation.
Alors,
That's what he wants.
je ne sais pas
So I don't know
quelle négociation on pourrait entamer
negotiation we could
actuellement
start
pour
currently
éviter, pour
to avoid
lui convaincre que c'est pas ça son
to
but.
convince him that that
réponse
shouldn't be his
aujourd'hui
goal. Our answer today
est ancrée dans le fait de
is
démontrer à
anchored.
quel point
We
nos
want to
économies
show
sont interreliées.
how
Et
our
si on crée
economies
des
are
barrières
intertwined,
entre nos
and if we
économies,
create
les familles
obstacles,
des deux côtés de la frontière vont
families in both
souffrir.
sides of the border
Pour
will suffer.
démontrer que on
to
devrait être
show
en train de
that
faire des
we
choses ensemble.
should do things
Et
together.
pendant qu'il
And while
fait le choix de
he's
vouloir
choosing to
ruiner l'économie canadienne,
ruin Canadian economy,
je ne sais pas si
I don't
devancer
know
des négociations dans une situation de
to
si mauvaise
accelerate
foi dans laquelle on se trouve
with
maintenant,
in such
où
bad
il amène
faith
des
that we,
tarifs
the
sans
bad faith we see that
aucune justification factuelle
with
aujourd'hui.
by putting tariffs that have
Je
no
sais pas s'il ouvrait
justification
les
at all.
négociations.
I
On serait
don't know
toujours ouvert
if
à le faire s'il le voulait,
we
mais c'est
are
pas
open
un
to
enjeu
those
dont il parle,
negotiations.
pour le présent.
But currently, no.
I'm just trying to remember. What was that? CUSMA, that's right. I think in terms of what he wants, and I heard he talked about banking again this morning in a tweet, which doesn't make any sense because American banks, there's about 16 American banks currently active in Canada holding about $113 billion worth of assets in this country. So the American banks are alive and well and prospering in Canada. It's an example of not really being able to see what it is that he wants, because even the excuse that he's giving for these tariffs today of fentanyl is completely bogus, completely unjustified, completely false. So we actually have to fold back on the one thing he has said repeatedly, that what he wants is to see a total collapse of the Canadian economy, because that'll make it easier to annex us, is the second half of his thought. Now, first of all, that's never going to happen. We will never be the 51st state. But yeah, he can do damage to the Canadian economy, and he's started this morning. But he is rapidly going to find out, as American families are going to find out, that that's going to hurt people on both sides of the border. Americans will lose jobs. Americans will be paying more for groceries, for gas, for cars, for homes, because we have always done best when we work together. So we are, of course, open to starting negotiations on the CUSMA review, but let us not fool ourselves about what he seems to be wanting. And I will admit, I have been holding out hope that these tariffs were just a clever negotiating ploy that would have the impact that they're having now without even bringing them in over the past weeks, as we've seen order books dry up for Canadian companies from American customers, as we've seen expansion plans in Canada put on hold, as we've seen people choosing to invest in the United States over the past weeks because of the threat of tariffs. But now that he's moved forward with tariffs, we're going to see the real impact of a trade war between our two countries. And that impact will be to hurt American families.
Prime Minister Tonda McCharles with the Toronto Star. I hope you can be as specific as possible for a number of these points. Everybody's looking to what actually you're going to do. In your statement last night, you referenced non-tariff measures, and I want to know exactly what you're prepared to contemplate there. And given that your likely successors, both Carney and Poilievre, have said it should be dollar-for-dollar retaliatory tariffs, that's on $600 billion worth of American imports. If you were to do that, is that on or off the table?
I will be sitting down, as I have every week for the past many, many weeks, with the premiers this afternoon to talk about our individual, combined and collective response to this. As we've put on the table, the federal government has $155 billion worth of tariffs that we can move forward with immediately and that we will be moving forward with both now and 21 days from now to give Canadian companies time to adjust their supply chains to not be overly impacted by this. But there are many other things that have been surfaced by different premiers in different approaches that we can look at. One, for example, is around purchasing and around suppliers and around contracts, whether it's municipal, provincial, or federal, with American companies. There are many different things that we've been looking at, and that conversation with the premiers this afternoon is going to be very, very important. But I can tell you what we have seen is Canadians across provinces and territories, across political lines, are united in knowing that this is a time to hit back hard and to demonstrate that a fight with Canada will have no winners. And the sooner we can get past this fight, back to working together to take on the world as our two countries always have, the better we'll all be.
To what extent have you turned or gotten cooperation from any other allies to exact more pain on the U.S. to accelerate getting to a solution? And are you concerned that Mexico appears to be trying to do their own thing maybe next Sunday? Where are you with any guarantees you've got allies?
I've just spent quite a bit of time over these past couple of weeks meeting with European and international allies to talk about a number of different things, including standing up for the rules-based order by defending Ukraine, but also being there for each other in a more challenging and uncertain world. And I can tell you that every country is very, very aware that if the American government is willing to do this to their own closest ally, neighbor, and friend, everyone is vulnerable to a trade war. And our ability to work together thoughtfully and strategically to make sure we're supporting our citizens, we're doing things together in a more diversified way is something that is on the mind of all of our allies.
En français, vous en êtes où dans les discussions avec les alliés, que ce soit européens ou mexicains?
Where are you at during with the conversation with your allies, with several of our allies and our friends from Europe and international? Everybody is worried. They know that if Americans are ready to do this to Canada, they're the closest ally and interconnected partner. Everybody risks the same. Our capacity to work together, to do more together, to diversify supply chains more in an even more deliberate manner. That's the conversation that we're having, and we're continuing to have with the allies. With our Mexican partner, we continue to, we remain in contact with them, close contact. And we're going to analyze how we can do things together, as I said. So we don't need to suffer more than necessary.
Prime Minister Rachel Haynes from CTV National News. As we know, the Liberal Party is going to be picking a new leader over the weekend. But when is it going to be your last official day as Prime Minister?
That will be up to a conversation between the new leader and myself to figure out how long a transition is needed. It should happen reasonably quickly, but there's a lot of things to do in a transition like this, particularly at this complicated time in the world.
My last day will be determined once the new leader of the Liberal Party has been chosen. That will be a conversation about how long will be required to make that transition. There are many different elements to be considered, but I know that we want to do it quickly.
So it sounds like it won't be immediately on March 9th or March 10th. So it sounds like you'll probably still have some time remaining to put in some more actions on this. Is one of those things that you're considering going to be taxing oil, gas, and potash exports, even if premiers don't consent to that?
As I said, the most important thing we're facing, as I've said, the most important thing we can do is ensure that Canadians remain united. That's why whatever response, individually or collectively, we do across the country, we have to make sure that no single part of the country is carrying a greater burden or suffering any more than everyone else. This is going to be tough for all of us, but we need to be pulling and holding Canadians together every step of the way. And that's the conversation I'm going to be having with the premiers this afternoon in our now weekly meetings. There will be many different ideas we discuss, but the most important thing, more important than doing specific or effective pressure points on the United States, is keeping Canadians united together. As we go through the pain that these American tariffs will inflict on our economy, on our workplaces, on Canadian families, we will be able to say this is happening to us by the decisions of a different government. As American families suffer the impact of these tariffs, of this trade war with Canada, they will be saying this is happening because our own government is choosing to do it to us. That's a very different proposition. And the most important thing right now, more important than anything else, is for Canadians to remain united. And that's why all premiers will be focused on things that make sure Canadians don't get divided amongst ourselves. This is a time for us to pull together, because the Americans will be having very real and very challenging debates and discussions about these actions. There will be no debate in Canada about whether or not we should be pulling together and responding. Everyone is aligned on that, and protecting that is job one for the Canadian government and the Canadian Prime Minister.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau.
Okay. Évidemment,
clearly, there are different things that different provinces and sectors can do to put pressure on the United States. Many ideas have been put on the table, but I want to be very clear. One region or industry in Canada will not suffer or carry a larger burden than others. We need to be fair with our response and our supports. And the most important thing in all of this is that Canadians remain united. And that's what I spoke about with the premiers of the provinces and territories this afternoon.
L'unité de mission et de courage et de détermination,
courage and determination, all of these values that Canadians will be showing in the days and weeks to come will be our strongest weapon.
Les familles canadiennes qui vont faire face à
the Canadian families that will be negatively affected by these tariffs will be saying to themselves, we will stand united as Canadians because it's another country that is doing this to us. We will stand together and we'll get through this. American families that will see lost jobs, price hikes, and more because of these tariffs, they will say to themselves, this is because of our own government that we are suffering now. And that's going to lead to very difficult conversations amongst Americans, discussions on why this trade war, this unjustified war is happening.
Follow-up. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. Mackenzie Gray with Global. You mentioned the markets earlier. Someone who knows a thing about them, Warren Buffett, came out and said that these tariffs could be viewed as an act of war. Does the Canadian government believe these tariffs from Donald Trump is an act of war from the U.S.?
Canadians are not angry at the American people for this. We don't have anything against Americans. Americans are our neighbors, our friends, our partners. We do things together. We've done things together for decades and generations. This is a policy decision by the American government designed to go after the Canadian economy. This is a trade war, yes. But Canadians are hurt. Canadians are angry. We're going to choose to not go on vacation in Florida or Old Orchard Beach or wherever. We're going to choose to try to buy Canadian products and forego bourbon and other classic American products. And yeah, we're probably going to keep booing the American anthem. But let me tell Americans, we're not booing you. We're not booing your teams. We're not booing your players. We're booing a policy that is designed to hurt us. And we're insulted. And we're angry. But we're Canadian, which means we're going to stand up for each other. We're going to fight. And we're going to win.
There are probably a lot of folks watching on TV today who've been laid off or they were told not to come into work today because of these tariffs. Can you explain to them why you've not announced any relief measures today to help those folks out?
As I've said, our entire focus has been on preventing these tariffs from coming in, if there was at all a way, and it now looks like there was never a way we were going to be able to avoid these tariffs that the President was determined to do. And our focus now is going to be on making sure that they get lifted and that there is an end to this trade war as quickly as possible. But over the past month, we have been working on measures that if these tariffs last longer than a few hours or a few days, we be able to help Canadian citizens, Canadian workers, Canadian companies make it through this time. But let's also be clear, this is going to be tough. The American trade war is going to hurt the Canadian economy and is going to hurt all of us. What our government needs to make sure we're doing is try to make sure that nobody goes hungry and that everyone carries their share of this. And that's a hard thing to do, but that's where we're leaning in, both as a federal government and with provinces and territories on responses to be there for Canadians.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
Merci.
That concludes today's press conference.
All right, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau there, taking questions from reporters and beginning with some opening remarks, a lot of which is noteworthy and certainly important to communicate to you. A couple of quick programming notes. I'm Vashi Kapelos coming to you out of...
For a voice check.
Station, this is Courtney Beasley with NASA Communications. How do you hear me?
Good afternoon, Courtney. We've got you loud and clear.
I have you all loud and clear as well. It's great to see all of you, and thanks for joining us today for our On Orbit news conference. We'll be taking questions from the media on our phone bridge today, but before we get started, I'll toss it over to Commander Nick Hague for opening remarks. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Courtney. So I think, as most of you know, there was a series of decisions that was made last July and August timeframe to balance the safe return of Butch and Sonny along with continuing the ISS mission. And one of those decisions was to modify Crew 9, the complement of Crew 9. And so in late September, Alex and I launched as a crew of 2 with 2 empty seats to come to the space station and rapidly integrate Butch and Sonny into Crew 9 and then continue to serve out the duration of Crew 9's planned time on orbit as members of Expedition 72. I say all of that just to set up 2 points that I'd like to start off today with. The first is that this mission, the mission of the space station, the scientific exploration, is something that we deeply believe in. Its ability to make a positive impact for all of humanity. And it's that belief that allows us to take those risks, risks of putting yourself on top of a rocket and launching into space, the risks of living on board an outpost that's orbiting in the cold vacuum of space, and even the risk of developing a new spacecraft to get us to and from the space station. And so the mission is very important to us. The second aspect that I wanted to touch on is just the privilege it's been to be able to bear witness to the professionalism that's been on demonstration every day, and the way that that Butch and Sonny have taken everything that's been thrown at them, and the way that they have responded to that has been an example. But it's not just Butch and Sonny. I think that the occurrences over the past year have actually impacted almost all of the members of the U.S. Astronaut Corps and our international partners and their families. And so there are ripple effects. And to see how that community has responded to this just makes me proud to be part of that legacy of dedicated service, part of that group. It's a privilege to be a colleague of all of theirs. And so that legacy, here in a few short days, Crew 10 is going to arrive, and we're going to hand the baton to Crew 10, and we are going to return to Earth at the end of a successful long-duration mission aboard the space station, performing that mission that we so deeply care about. And that handover will mark the continuation of a legacy that's been going on board the space station for 25 years. And so with that, we're happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Nick. We'll go ahead and jump right into questions from our media. Just a reminder to press *1 when you are ready to ask your question. Our first question comes from Marcia Dunn with the Associated Press.
Hi, I'm hoping you can hear me. For Butch and Sonny, what's it like to wake up one day in space and find yourself in the center of a political story? I'm referring to the comments a month ago made by President Trump and Elon Musk regarding your return.
Obviously, we've heard some of these different things that have been said. I can tell you at the outset, all of us have the utmost respect for Mr. Musk, and obviously respect and admiration for our President of the United States, Donald Trump. We appreciate them. We appreciate all that they do for us, for human spaceflight, for our nation. And we're thankful that they are in the positions they're in. The words they've said, politics, I mean, that's part of life. We understand that. And there's an important reason why we have a political system and the political system that we do have. And we're behind it 100%. We know what we've lived up here. We know the ins and outs and the specifics that they may not be privy to. And I'm sure that they have some issues that they are dealing with, information that they have that we are not privy to. So when I think about your question, that's part of life. We are on board with it. We support our nation. We support our nation's leaders, and we're thankful for them.
Our next question comes from Emily with NBC News.
Hey there, thanks for taking my question. Butch and Sunny, your resilience and positivity really has shined through, but what has been the most challenging aspect about the changing timeline in space? And on the flip side, what will you miss most about space?
Hey, thanks, Emily, for that question, because immediately it brings to mind family and all the people on the ground who support us. So, you know, it's been a roller coaster for them, probably a little bit more so than for us. You know, we're here, we have a mission, we're just doing what we do every day, and, you know, every day is interesting because we're up in space and it's a lot of fun. So I think the hardest part is, you know, having the folks on the ground have to not know exactly when we're coming back. Know, of course, that we are coming back with Crew 9, but, you know, all of that uncertainty, I think, is probably the most difficult part. And, you know, it takes a little time just to have that conversation with them on a daily basis and say, hey, we're coming back before long, so, you know, don't make all those plans without me. You know, we'll be back before too long. And I think, you know, what are you going to miss about space? Everything about space. You know, this has been Butch and my third flight to the International Space Station. We helped put it together. We've been up here seeing it change throughout all these years, do a lot of science up here. I think just the fact that we're living up here in this very unique place gives you an amazing perspective, not only, you know, out the window, obviously, but also just on how to solve problems. I don't want to lose that spark of inspiration and that perspective when I leave, so I'm going to have to bottle it somehow.
Our next question is from Mark Strassman with CBS News.
Hey, everyone. Good to see all of you, talk to all of you. Look forward to seeing you back at home. I've got two questions. First one is for Nick and Sunny. Through no fault or wish of your own, this mission became political, also political back in the U.S., is this drive to downsize government, federal agencies, including NASA. Are you all at all concerned, try that again, are you at all concerned that your NASA teammates could be distracted by that push to downsize? And then, Butch, you get the easier one. We're all the product of our life experiences, and this extended business trip of yours certainly qualifies. What is your life lesson or takeaway from these 9 months in space?
So, Mark, I guess I'm going to start with the hard question as you defined it. You know, up here we're a little bit insulated from a lot of what's going on down on the ground, but one thing we're not insulated from is how the operational team is functioning. And so on a daily basis, on a minute by minute basis, we're in contact with the ground. That team is supporting us, and it's not just in Houston, it's the entire NASA and international apparatus that's supporting us. And that support from the first day that I showed up here to today has been unwavering.
To your question, I can tell you honestly, my feeling on all of this goes back to my faith. It's bound in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. He is working out his plan and his purposes for his glory throughout all of humanity, and how that plays into our lives is significant and important. And however that plays out, and I am content because I understand that. I understand that he's at work in all things. Some things are for the good. Go to Hebrews chapter 11. Some things look to us to be not so good, but it's all working out for his good, for those that will believe. And that's the answer. So thanks for asking.
Our next question is from Gina Sinceri with ABC News.
This question is for Sunny. Sunny, I was talking to some kids who were talking about Gorby's tattoos, and they want to know what dogs you have now, and have they missed you, and how much are you looking forward to seeing them when you come home?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, it's probably hardest, getting back to the other question, for my dogs, although thank God they don't really know time that well. But yes, I have two Labrador Retrievers right now, Gunner and Rotor, who have been having boy time with my husband, and I think they'll be very happy for Mom to come home. So I'm excited to see my labs when I get back. And yes, these were Gorby's footprints.
Our next question is from Lauren Grush with Bloomberg.
Hi, good to talk to you. This is for Butch and Sunny. Following up on the topic of politics, part of the discussion has been a claim that the decisions surrounding the timing of your return were influenced by politics, and that there was an option to come home earlier. I'm just wondering if you feel like politics influenced the decision, and would you have wanted to come home earlier?
From my standpoint, politics is not playing into this at all. From our standpoint, I think that they would agree. We came up prepared to stay long, even though we planned to stay short. That's what we do in human spaceflight. That's what your nation's human spaceflight program is all about, planning for unknown, unexpected contingencies. And we did that. And that's why we flowed, as Nick said, right into Crew 9, into Expedition 72, as we did. And it was somewhat of a seamless transition because we had planned ahead for it and we were prepared.
If I can add, when I launched in late September, our planned return date was the end of February. And given the amount of training that's required to get a crew ready and the complexities associated with getting a spacecraft ready to launch and operate in space, targeting a March return is pretty much on target.
Our next question is from Eric Berger with Ars Technica.
Hi, thanks very much. How is the condition of the International Space Station? How do you find it? There was a suggestion by Elon Musk that it could be deorbited earlier. Just wondering if you think the structural facility can hold up till 2030, and is there 6 years of meaningful research to be done during that time? Thank you.
Hey, Eric, great question. We've been up here since sort of the beginning. Like I mentioned before, Butch and I had been part of the construction of the space station with the shuttle flight. So yeah, we've seen it grow from just a couple modules to this amazing laboratory that it is right now. And I actually was extremely impressed coming up here and seeing how much science is going on, particularly when we have the resupply missions that bring up a lot of science. I mean, this place is ticking. It's just really amazing. So I would say we're actually in our prime right now. We've got all the power, all of the facilities up and operating. So I would think that right now is probably not the right time to say call it quits. We have probably till 2030 in our agreements, and I think that's probably really accurate because we should make the most of this space station for our taxpayers and for all of our international partners, and hold our obligations and do that world-class science that this laboratory is capable of.
Our next question comes from Katrina Miller with New York Times.
Hi there. Thanks for taking my question. On Sunday, NASA Administrator Janet Petro said that dominating space was a way to keep America first. And so I'm curious, as astronauts on the International Space Station, working closely with partner countries, how you feel about that type of rhetoric as opposed to space exploration as a benefit for all of humanity. Thanks.
Clearly, the International Space Station serves as an example of how you can work together on an international stage and accomplish something greater than any one country can accomplish on their own. regardless of how much that individual country is contributing. And so as we go forward, you know, that's a lesson that I take from this is just the strength that you can achieve in that level of international cooperation, and endure a lot of things that we're able to fly above, you know, while we're in orbit, and continue to just operate on a daily basis, doing good things, discovering things for humanity.
Our next question is from Mark Carreau with Aviation Week.
Thank you. I'd like to ask each of you what you believe your mission time on this mission is contributing to the overall objectives of having people in space all the time in orbit.
Hey, Mark. Yeah, great question. So, I mean, as it started with Butch and I mean, it's just the, you know, getting new spacecraft, new technologies tested out, right? So that's how it started for us. And of course, for SpaceX Dragon as well, you know, new technologies coming up to the International Space Station. The space station doesn't only, you know, have docking ports. It also has technical demos, you know, for future of exploration for other spacecraft. It has different types of science experiments that are helping us to figure out how we're going to go further in space, as well as helping a lot of people back on Earth understanding new technologies. So, I mean, this space station, our contribution is being part of all of that science, you know, from the rocket technology, the spacecraft technology, to the pharmaceutical, to the biology, to everything that's associated with living and working in space. It's a whole different perspective, a whole different way of thinking, and you know, in my mind, it makes us think outside the box. And so that's why what I think our contribution is just being part of that, furthering that exploration.
Our next question is from Aaron Gregg with The Washington Post.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for doing this. So my question relates to Elon Musk has said that he made the offer to bring you guys back earlier and that it was denied. My first question is that true? And if so, what would that have looked like? Was he offering to make another flight, push seats on another flight? Could you give us some background there?
I can only say that Mr. Musk, what he says is absolutely factual. We have no information on that, though, whatsoever. What was offered, what was not offered, who it was offered to, how that process went. That's information that we simply don't have. So I believe him. I don't know all those details, and I don't think any of us really can give you the answer that you would be hoping for.
I'll be happy to direct any additional questions on this topic to a subject matter expert after this news conference. Let's continue to focus on this cruise mission. Our next question comes from Will Robinson-Smith with Spaceflight Now.
Hi, thanks for taking the time to talk with us. Question for Butch and/or Sunny. You both have had the opportunity to fly on Soyuz shuttle, Starliner, and now you're preparing to return on Dragon. So wonder, you know, now that you're preparing for your fourth time on a different spacecraft, you know, what that preparation work has been like, and, you know, what that flow of training has been for you guys these past few months. Thanks.
I'll give the quick answer. It's been fascinating. It's been amazing. We feel so fortunate to train on 4 different spacecraft, and each one has its own unique capabilities, its own unique systems, its own unique seats, everything suits. It's all been great, and to have that opportunity has been wonderful.
Yeah, I would agree with Butch. We've been really pretty lucky if you look at it and step back from, you know, in our careers and see what interesting things that we've got to do. That's it's pretty spectacular, just like you mentioned. But so coming home in this spacecraft will be a new chapter, and excited about it.
Our next question comes from Ashwarya with ESPN.
Thank you guys so much for taking the time. My question is for Sunny. Sunny, do you feel like you're saying one final goodbye to the ISS? And are you planning to leave anything personal behind?
Oh, don't remind me this might be my last flight. That's a little sad. I'm trying not to think about it too much, because like I mentioned earlier, being in space is just pretty spectacular. And, having the opportunity to come up here, I know we're very, very lucky. And having the opportunity to come up here 3 times has just been amazing. And, yeah, maybe there might be some hide and go seek for the next guys. Maybe they'll have to find something. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you where. They'll have to just find it.
Our next question comes from Robert Perlman with Collect Space.
Thank you. For Sunny and Butch, all the SpaceX Dragon suits we've seen worn to space and back have crew members' names embroidered on their right arm below their country's flag. How are yours configured? And Sunny, just curious, did Calypso, your zero-G indicator, go home on Calypso, or is it returning on Dragon like you?
So that Robert, for your first question, the answer is no. We were not down on the ground getting specifically measured for suits and stuff like that. So we have some generally generic suits that we are going to be that we've fitted into and tried out while we're up here. So no name, but that's okay. Hey, we're just Butch and Sunny, and everybody knows who we are by now. And secondly, Calypso, our gravity indicator went home with Calypso. The way it came up is the way it went back home.
And Robert, we do have Sharpies up here, so my suit might have a name on it.
Our next question is from Peggy with Journalist Financial Times.
Hello, thank you very much for taking my question. I wanted to pick up on something that was asked a little bit earlier. It sparked my curiosity about the main difference of flying the Starliner versus the Dragon. I mean, do you have any, I guess you haven't been on Dragon yet, but you've done the training. Can you sort of describe the differences that you see in the experience of flying the 2 spacecraft? And my second question is, would you be happy to fly on Starliner in future? Would you have been happy to fly home on it even, given that it came home safely?
I'll answer.
Canada's response is already somewhat detailed. Overnight, 1 minute past midnight, in fact, the first tranche of counter tariffs was applied, $30 billion worth on a number of different products, mostly consumer products. And here is the Prime Minister to address the plan in more detail. Let's take a listen in live.
The United States launched a trade war against Canada, their closest partner and ally, their closest friend. At the same time, They're talking about working positively with Russia